I'm as Australian as Empire, you know. I'm one of those who paints white on their nose. I'm part of the whole heart and soul. I'm as Australian as Empire.
Despite the fact that our population has fundamentally changed, this image of ourselves has not. Today, over half the Australian people have some non-English speaking background. Rarely do they see their image or life experiences reflected in our popular culture. Their Australian identity is denied.
I'm as Australian as Empire.
Well, I was born in Australia. I suppose I am Australian. Although to everybody I appear Australian, I think Greek, I talk Greek. I like to consider myself Greek. But when I go to Greece, I'm a foreigner. And here in Australia, I'm one of them, but I'm not with them.
What do you mean by that?
Well, in a situation at work, I'm sort of in the crowd, but I still don't feel as though I'm attached to them.
Well, I would say they are very fair, blue-eyed, good-natured, very cooperative. They are very helpful to us, particularly we coming from other countries, you know.
But are you an Australian?
Yes, I'm an Australian. I lived here for the last 5 years.
But you don't have blonde hair and blue eyes?
Well, I do not have. I come from India.
But you do see yourself as an Australian?
Oh, yes, I do. And I associate with them. In fact, I work with them.
Can I ask you what an Australian looks like?
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
What about you? Where were you born?
I was born here in Australia, Sydney.
Doesn't that make you an Australian?
Yes. Not really.
But you don't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Why don't you feel Australian?
Because I'm not comfortable here.
Feel Asian or Australian?
Asian. I feel Asian. I feel Asian more than I feel Australian here.
Exclusion from mainstream society forces some to seek an identity anywhere they can.
I feel Australian is when I'm in Cabramatta. That's the main thing, how I feel Australian. Because in Cabramatta, there's all Asian. Wherever you turn, there's always someone black hair, you know, with black hair. And say I go out, like where I don't feel Australian is when I go in, when I go outside Cabramatta and see and mix with the people that hasn't got the same hair colour, and they think that you're strange. And at the beginning of year 7 to the end of year 7, I used to hang around all Australian girls, and like they fit me in as a good friend, you know. They don't think of my background as an Asian or anything. And then what happened was other people, they used to say to my friends, the Australian girls, they used to say, oh, why is she hang around you? She's not Australian. Why you take her as a friend for? And then later on my friend told me, and that's when I stopped hanging out with the Australians, because like first I thought we fit perfectly, you know, like Australian and Asians mixing. And then what happens later, like other people sees it differently, because everybody's got their own background.
How did you feel when that happened?
I just feel left out again. Like I just feel like, oh, I shouldn't be hanging around Australians no more. I should go start hanging around with all my Asian friends.
Does this flag fly in the face of what it's supposed to represent, the Australian values we believe in? Does it represent a fair go for all?
This is the street that I live in. Brick cottage on my right, he's a New Zealander, married to an Australian woman. My neighbour is Maltese, married to Australian. Yellow fibre home, Yugoslavs, Koreans, the White House, and the houses that we're approaching now consist of all Australians. If we don't bring people that are willing to work and roll up their sleeves without trying to exploit this country, and this is what's been happening in the last 10 to 15 years, we're bringing the wrong type here and they're exploiting our country. They do not want to mix with us. They want to create their own little enclaves, and this is not good for Australia.
Australia liked the colourful introduction of the migrants when they first came, and it's great to see the different ethnic costumes and to hear a little bit of ethnic talk and music. Some of the music's beautiful. The different foods that we get from the different cultures. But when they come in the droves that they're in now, they're losing their, what word am I after? You just can't control packed crowds. And this is what's happening. And in a packed crowd, you're losing all perspective.
If you recognise that in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, the main receiving nations of immigrants, half the people today are of non-English speaking background immediately or through one generation, then the very neighbourhoods themselves have dramatically changed in the way that those early people knew that it would. And that itself has changed the kind of negotiation that goes on in the neighbourhoods. And we're at the point now of quite another order argument, because maybe some people think it's gone too far, but it's almost too late.
He'll be getting home by himself. So
the Samios family are an example of our complex and layered society. Born in Australia, of Greek descent, they're concerned about how their once familiar neighbourhood is becoming unfamiliar.
Our neighbourhood, since we have been here in the last 13 years, has changed dramatically.
And so do you all get on together?
Generally, but we tend to keep to ourselves, we really do.
So do you feel the sense of community is breaking down with all the different groups here?
I don't feel I'm in a community here.
People tend to be creatures of territories and familiarity. Those people who migrate are prepared for the shift in different degrees, but they leave knowing that they're going to go to different places and they're going to take the good and the bad with it. But those people who have stayed at home and all of a sudden, you know, things have changed and are a bit ambivalent about what this means in terms of their life. On the one hand, they like perhaps the fact that they can have cappuccinos or, you know, spaghetti. They like that. But on the other hand, they're not quite sure what it means, what this effect is having on themselves, on their goals, on where the nation's going or how resources are being distributed. I mean, are they going to lose out in some way, in some more fundamental way than they're gaining? So it creates a sense of unease for those who didn't shift, for those who believe that they've, you know, this is their place and that they are the hosts when the guests begin to outnumber them.